And that's one of the biggest things, right? Like for you, and we've had this in our own business, is you bring in somebody new and it costs you money to get them trained up. For us, I just account for 6 months of me not really making any money on employees. And so in this, market, how are you picking and choosing the agents that are coming to ask you to be on your team?
There was a part through 2016 to 18, I was in expansion within 5 doors. And we were, I was a regional director, regional owner of the Maryland, DC area. So I learned a lot about recruiting through those 2.5 years of agent count. Like that's all that mattered. It costs money to bring somebody into the organization. So during the expansion time, we would bring agents in and we started to dilute the culture. It cost money. Agents weren't getting into production and it started to be a strain on the organization. So now we're paying a lot more attention to just bringing an agent in for the sake of bringing an agent in for account purposes and making sure like they're motivated and they're aligned within the culture of the team.
Welcome to the Everyday Millionaire Show with Ryan Greenberg and Nick Kalfis. All right, guys, we are back with another episode of the Everyday Millionaire Show. We are here with Michael Schiff from the Schiff Home Team. How you doing, Michael?
Doing great today. How are you?
I'm good. Nick, how's it going?
Doing good, man.
So Mike or Michael?
Yeah, Michael.
Michael?
Yep.
Cool. So, Michael, give us a quick, elevator pitch on your background prior to getting into real estate. Your college, high school, how did you do in school? What just like a elevator,
Elevator pitch might be tough, but I'll sum it up quickly.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Baltimore, grew up around the Randallstown, Pikesville area. When people around Baltimore ask you where you went to school, they mean where you went to high school. Mm-hmm. So I went to Pikesville High for 2 years. Then in 10th and 11th grade, I went to Massanutten Military Academy in Virginia. I needed some good structure in my life at that time, and it did just that. It was really good. Was able to rise through the ranks at military school, became the battalion commander, captain of the football team, all that good stuff. And then I left military school, did a year at Villa Julie, which is now Stevenson University. And then after Stevenson, went to University of Florida in Gainesville. So went into the business school down there. It's Warrenton School of Business. Studied business administration, management, and I was doing a specialization in criminology to become a lawyer, which I thought I wanted to do. And some things changed, and I ended up taking a year off of, from graduating in 2004, took that year off and was just kind of wondering what I was going to do with my life. I took the LSAT, but I didn't apply for law schools at the time. So I figured, what could I do with this year? And it was October of 2004 that I thought, well, I'll go out and get my real estate license. And, I had no idea what I was going to get myself into. I knew I wanted to do something that was accredited to an extent. And I went to interview with commercial brokers, and they all said, go out and get 2 years of residential experience and then come back. Interviewed with a couple mortgage companies, and they didn't want to bring on new college students to enroll in their business. So as a newly graduated college student, I ended up going to sit for the real estate class, took the exam within 60 days, and passed and got licensed in December of 2004.
Nice. So I have a actual similar story. I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a lawyer, and I was too late to, because I needed some assistance, like a scholarship, and I was too late to apply for it. So I just enrolled in like a graduate new program that they had at University of Baltimore at the time. And then I'm like, do I want to do this or do I want to get into real estate? And I was like, took real estate classes my last semester of grad school, became a realtor.
There you go. See that? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So kind of like backed into it. Didn't necessarily grow up saying I wanted to be in real estate. Never really paid attention to the architecture of like buildings or any of that. Like we didn't grow up with HGTV shows. So nowadays you see a lot of young kids in their, kids or teenagers that come on showings with agents or with their buyers or mom and dads as buyers. And they know more information about the property than I do sometimes because they just study the apps and everything like that, which is pretty wild. So I look at those kids and I'm like, you guys would make great realtors, but didn't have any of that. It was just kind of backed into it as default. But I did like the business side of things. I liked sales. I liked investment properties, and things were like very black and white. So it seemed like a good, easy fit coming from, the background I came from.
So with 2004, then we had the impending crash in 2008, 2009. How did that affect your business? Did you have a good run up at least to that time where it crashed?
I did. I was lucky enough to get hooked up with a small boutique broker at the time. I got linked up with Simone Real Estate, which doesn't exist anymore, but many people might know Mark Simone in our local marketplace. So Mark's dad, Vito Simone, was a broker, had a very small independent brokerage, and I linked up with him, and he really gave me a big opportunity. Part of the reasons I didn't go to law school was I had a criminal background from University of Florida when I was there. So it kind of prevented me from applying for law schools. And I, even had trouble getting my real estate license initially. So I share that for any listeners out there that may have gone through similar challenges in the past. Vito was my, kind of person that believed in me and walked me down to the commissioner's office to make sure that they understood he would be overseeing me and my responsibilities. So it is possible with a background to get your real estate license with the right surroundings of people that are with you that are willing to support you through it.
Awesome. So how many years? Well, I guess what happened in 2008? So after the crash, did you have like a really tough couple years? Did you have to get another job? Did you stick with real estate? How did that work?
So I started off with a really good run up from '05 was my first full year. And the brokerage I was with, we got started with investment properties. And being 21 years old, it was very easy to identify a good deal in the sense where it was easier to work with an investment property than it was for a retail buyer seller. I was young, and it was hard for me to have confidence in myself and for other people to believe in me that I would be able to help them. But if I was willing to go into neighborhoods to find investment properties, it was a good fit. And we focused our time and attention on a lot of areas of Baltimore City. So that run up of '05 and '06 was very good. I learned a lot about the investment and construction side of the business at that time. And then 2007 came when the subprime market crashed. It was August of '07. And I remember being at a settlement at that time when one of the banks failed. And, we did our job, sold the property and made it through inspections, appraisal, all that. All we had to do was show up and get paid. And the settlement officer walked into the room and said that they're not going to be funding this deal. So in '08, when things started to get a little bit more rougher, I ended up getting involved with a business that my dad started at the same time. It was a dental brokerage and also a wealth management company. So it was an opportunity that was on the table. I was still grinding it out with real estate. I was wearing this dental brokerage hat where we would help dentists, sell their dental practices when they're ready for transition. And that was similar to what we were doing in real estate sales. So that kind of went hand in hand. And then I had the bright idea to go out and get my investment advisory license, basically a Series 65, to support my dad's CPA firm. So I was a wealth manager, a dental broker, and a real estate agent from 2008 to 2011. That helped kind of support those years when the market turned.
So you were a solo agent at the time or worked on the team?
I was a solo agent. Mark and Simone and I, who I mentioned before, we were partners from probably 2005 to 2007. We had the go-to team. It was one of the first teams weren't really big back in '05, but it was like a partnership. And then I was a solo agent from end of 2007 to about 2011 when I decided to build a team.
So that's my next question is how many years were you selling independently, quote unquote, before you started the team?
About 7 years.
7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And would you recommend that for people out there who want to become new agents to join as a solo agent or to become a realtor on a team?
I chased my tail for 7 years, and it was just because I wasn't open to the model of real estate. It took me 7 years to get really exposed to it. So I ran around chasing my tail, didn't have any systems. I ran around with like a pocket full of Post-it notes of who I was supposed to call back that day, an Excel spreadsheet of my so-called database and tracking sheet. So a team definitely helped me kind of get organized and create some systems that help leverage the business. And so what I would recommend, any new agent getting into the business, there's a lot of value in joining a team and being able to learn how to run a real estate business properly and the metrics around it. However, it's not to say that somebody brand new can get started. I believe the state of Maryland requires 3 years of real estate experience before starting your own team. So there's that piece. But there's nothing that would prevent anybody from doing it. But I would probably recommend if you join a team that offers a lot of value, there's a lot of value that you can get and learn at the team owner's expense in a sense. Get your leads, get, the support, transaction, listing coordination, the things you need, photography, signs, get that all paid for, learn the business in the first 3 years. And maybe after that, you make a decision whether it's for you to, build your own team or stay on the team and grow.
So how many agents currently do you have working on your team?
We have 20 agents on the team now.
Nice. And so now you survived 2008. Now we're in a time where rates are high. Volume overall is down. Nick and I are both investors. We focus on investment properties. I'm not so much in the residential space as much, but I am an agent. I sell my own flips and that kind of thing. And its volume is down. What is your plan, or what are you going to do differently now than you did last year?
Yeah. So we are just very hyper focused on the conversations around the market and what's going on. So rates are high, inventory is low, and there's a lot of the affordability is a big issue right now, and inventory is a big issue. So we focus a lot on finding the motivated, and that's a big focus around the team. Some will, some won't. Who cares next is a phrase that we use a lot on the team. So it's just a matter of, SOI is our primary source of business for our agents in our team business. So we're constantly putting out marketing towards events for our sphere of influence. And we'll, get plenty of referrals from that part of the business. However, when we've exploited all options within our sphere of influence, now we're moving on to other data leads, through motivated sellers, some internet leads that we still pay for to get through it, and we're looking for motivation. So we're looking for the 7 Ds of real estate that create motivation. So we'll run through them: divorce, death, diamonds, diplomas, diapers, or distress. So those 7 Ds, if we can tap into a buyer or seller's motivation, then we know they need to move. If somebody's getting married and they're growing out of their household, they don't care so much about a rate that's 7.25 in a sense when they need more space. When there's death, there's a house to be sold. So we're targeting those type of motivated seller leads or buyers that must make decisions and move in this market.
So are you getting more seller leads or buyer leads now than you were? Let me rephrase that. Are you getting more buyer and seller leads now versus 2 years ago?
There was more leads. There was more buyer leads in the marketplace 2 years ago because there's just a lot of people that wanted to buy with lower interest rates. And there were sellers that wanted to sell in order to tap into their equity. I think the equity positions are still high for sellers right now. We haven't seen so much of a drop off there, just maybe not so much of an acceleration with that appreciation. However, I would say it's definitely slowed down from where it was before. So we're constantly, throwing more activity at generating those leads, or more dollars at generating those leads in order to have enough people to call throughout the day.
Have you tried skip tracing lists and such like that, like pinpoint skip? They could,
Yes. Yeah. So that's kind of one of our secondary sources of leads is through skip tracing and, through data list.
So when your overall volume is down on the team, how do your individual agents become affected by that?
It's a great question. We're outpacing the market. If the market's down 30%, and we're, down 5 or 10%, we're still outpacing the market, but our, volume has been down just overall with overall volume down. It affects individual agents because if the team's volume down, their volume's down. We try to create win-wins within the team. So there's some newer agents that are just coming into the business, and we have put together an ISA program for them where they would come in and, the metrics on the team is to set 3 appointments a week, hold 2 appointments, and get 1 signature a week, either a buyer agency or a seller agency. So that is the standard on the team. So they have to make whatever amount of calls within their conversion ratio in order to hit that metric. Now, if there's a new agent that's coming in and they have the time and they're not going on appointments, they can make, usually that can be done with 10 contacts a day to get to 321. A new agent might take a little bit more, so they might need to make 50 contacts a day or 60 contacts a day. We will actually pay them in an ISA role in order to jumpstart that. So pay them a salary plus a portion of the commission so they can start to build their pipeline.
Okay, that sounds nice for somebody coming in, because I mean that's one of the biggest things, right? Like for you, and we've had this in our own business, is you bring in somebody new and it costs you money to get them trained up to, you know, for us, I just account for 6 months of me not really making any money on employees until they can do things on their own. So in this, market, how are you picking and choosing the agents that are coming to ask you to be on your team?
Yeah. There was a part, through 2016 to 18, I was in expansion within 5 doors. And we were, I was a regional director, regional owner of the Maryland, DC area. So we learned a lot. I learned a lot about recruiting through those, 2.5 years of agent count. Like that's all that mattered. And being, affiliated with a Keller Williams franchise before, it was all about agent count as well. So, we were constantly focusing on like just bringing on agents. If you can fog up a mirror, like come on in. But like you said, Ryan, it costs money to bring somebody into the organization. So there was a part of during the expansion time, we would bring agents in. We had over 25 agents on the team at that time, and in one location while managing 5 other locations around it. And we started to dilute the culture. It cost money. Agents weren't getting into production, and it started to be a strain on the organization. So now we're paying a lot more attention to just bringing an agent in for the sake of bringing an agent in for account purposes and making sure like they're motivated and they're aligned within the culture of the team. Because, it costs money, turnover, takes wind out of the culture of the organization. So it's really sitting down with them and, figuring out their motivation, setting expectations. Like it could be 3 to 6 months before you're rocking and rolling with your pipeline and getting paychecks. Do you have, resources to get you through, or do we need to talk about, some other type of comp plan? And, being able to, determine who is able to do that, because if somebody comes in with the expectation, like within 30 days, they're going to have a check, it's the wrong expectation to come in. Is it possible? It is possible, but it's really not the reality of real estate and being on a team.
So you're with EXP now, right?
Correct. Yep.
What made you transition from Keller Williams to EXP?
Yeah. So actually, the 31st of this month will be 2 years. So 2-year anniversary coming up. It was, somewhat outgrowing the opportunity that was available within Keller Williams and seeing the opportunity within EXP and of how exponentially, greater it was. We ended up making the decision. As a larger team, we were kind of on an island of ourselves. We kind of processed our own transactions and didn't rely on the broker so much other than clearing the transaction itself. The leadership, there's a leadership change within our office, and the dust was still settling. We're just trying to figure out the next steps. And we were able to find these great leaders, Kyle Whistle and Dan Beer out in San Diego, that have walked this walk, well before us and are selling, $600 million to $1 billion of real estate. And we thought we were kind of starting to outgrow the opportunity within our local market. And we wanted some folks that were able to pour into us to be able to grow. We kept on hitting this $100 million ceiling, and that was it. And within our market center, there wasn't too many agents doing over $100 million. So we felt as though if we wanted to break that ceiling, we needed to surround ourselves by others that have broken that ceiling. So aligning within EXP, we aligned with other organizations and teams, through our upline that have, that sell $200 to $1 billion of real estate each and every year, and are so willing to share their systems and strategies with us on how they did it. And that over top of the comp plan through EXP within revenue share and stock awards. A lot of people laugh at it, and I can understand, being somewhat of a multi-level marketing company, that would be their initial thought.
I literally said that right before this podcast, right before you got here. We were talking about it, and I was like, why, and this is one of my questions, is why EXP or why any brokerage if you have the experience that you have? Like I'm close with James Weiskircher
Yeah.
on he owns Next Step. He owns Next Step, so he gets everything from that. Why now, with the experience that you have and the agents that you have, why don't you start your own thing? What is EXP really giving you that keeps you there?
Yeah, we looked into the opportunity of like starting our own or doing a small independent. Just the cost benefit of the liability, responsibility, and the lack of a like international brand was somewhat not worth the cost and the savings. I mean, what we pay in the EXP is very minimal. You're talking about $16,000 that you get back in stock once you sell 30 houses a year. So it costs that cost goes away. The agents on the team, it's $4,000 for them to be on it, to be affiliated
Per year?
per year. Yeah. So it's minimal when you start to think about the cost of having a broker, having compliance, having all the other liability and exposure, and when things hit the fan, like that takes your time away to focus on those problems. So as a leverage play there, it also opens us up to the additional resources of people across the country that are just so willing to help us grow. And as we have brought people into EXP, there's rewards and benefits of doing that outside of that continue on through revenue share. So it's a real thing. Numbers start adding up. There's commas in checks. There's multiple commas in the stock awards. So it's something that is not feasible in my opinion by doing a complete independent, and it just gives a little bit more freedom and flexibility than having to have the responsibility of running your own.
So, like admin staff, your transaction coordination, is that through you or is that through EXP? Like, who pays for that
Yeah,
portion?
so that is through the Schiff Home team.
You have to pay for your admin. You have
Yep.
to pay for those people.
Right.
And then the $4,000 for your agents, the agents are paying that
They
as
pay
well?
that, yes.
Okay. So there are some benefits to sticking with that big name, big bucks organization kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, EXP locally here is still. It reminded me of Keller Williams when I first joined in 2011. People weren't familiar with Keller Williams back then. It was a lot of Keller who. So it's building upon itself, but there is a network of individuals and support that happens behind closed doors and within Facebook, private groups, masterminds that go on. And those are the masterminds that help our business grow. So I could be on an island by myself as an independent broker and just networking with limited amount of people. Or, the way I grew my business was through masterminding and hanging out with other people that were just doing it a lot better than I was and taking things from their business. So within EXP, I just have access to so many people that are doing, big numbers, bigger numbers than people locally in our town.
Yeah, I agree with that. People that want to grow, they definitely have to change their surroundings in most cases to get to that next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was always just like, how much are they taking and what are they giving? Because I feel like some of those, it's easy to say, oh, I've heard of EXP, I've heard of KW, but what are they actually taking away from you? Is and what are they giving to you? Really, is the big thing. Like, are they doing the compliance for you, or do you still have to hire a compliance person? Because
Right.
you mentioned compliance before, and I'm like, okay, well, are they actually paying for that person to do the compliance, or do you still have to pay for that?
Right. So within EXP, they pay for the compliance. So all the
Okay.
broker review and compliance is paid for by EXP, but transaction coordination or listing coordination is paid for by the team.
Okay.
So do you just have to email somebody for compliance when you're doing each contract?
Yes. Yep. And then broker reviews done on like SkySlope. So we upload our documents. It all gets reviewed, and can't get paid unless every document is uploaded. So there's definitely a checks and balances there. That is probably more compliant if I were trying to do it independently. It's just more of a formalized system and technology that's already built it in place versus going out and building our own or bootstrapping onto something else.
So because contracts can be different state to state, is there like a Maryland person who does compliance for only Maryland, and are they local to Maryland, or are they
Yeah,
just
that's the
learning?
beauty thing of like EXP is, I mean, there's one broker per state.
Okay.
So the value in that is, within a Keller Williams franchise, many people might be familiar with, there might be 3, 4, 500 agents within that franchise. And within Maryland laws, if you want to co-broke with somebody or do an open house for somebody, it has to be within that immediate brokerage within that franchise or market center. Within EXP, there's one broker for the entire state. So we have close to 2,000 or over 2,000 agents in the state. So it opens up our ability to network, off-market deals, coming soons, and co-brokes or open houses directly within a network of 2,000 versus like 300. So there is a broker review desk. If anybody's familiar with EXP, there's also a virtual world, is kind of what they initially built. I haven't gone on it that much. I mean, it is like The Sims, if you've ever played that game, and you can walk through it. So you can either send an email and get a response, and that's typically what we do, or call them. But if you're really feeling frisky, you can go into the virtual world and you can take your avatar and walk to the Maryland room, go to the broker desk, and there's another avatar there, and you can simply talk into your microphone and interact with it that way.
Wow.
It's pretty wild.
The world is getting crazy. So for marketing, are you in a specific area? Like, are you focusing on zip codes? Or are you just Maryland in general? The reason I ask is because we've had some listings or potential listings. Like, I have one that I'm about to flip in Elkton. Now, I don't know if I even want to sell that property in Elkton because it's out of my zone. What is your guys' zone, and do you pick your agents based on where they're located so you could focus on grow different areas, or how does that work for you guys?
So for special zip codes, I mean, Zillow, we've pulled back a lot of spend from Zillow, but we're in the Pikesville zip codes for Zillow. And that's just because a little bit of our backyard have some more name recognition within Pikesville and everything like that can help with the conversion of those leads. But outside of that, our seller leads and where we market is by a data list. So a lot of times that might take us to Prince George's County, Frederick County. We've been into Cecil County before, but primarily it's Baltimore City, Baltimore County. That probably makes up 90% of our business.
Yeah. So when you have, let's say, a meeting with somebody that's in, Harford County or Cecil County, right? What kind of things do you say to try to lock in that thing? Because one of their questions will be, how do you know the local market?
Yeah.
Well, you probably don't know the local market that well. So what's one of the strategies that you get to lock in those listings if you don't really know the local market? How do you get them to trust you?
Right. So a lot of times we'll match up our agents with geographical locations, where they live. So we have agents that live in Howard County, Anne Arundel County, Carroll County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and we'll match up as best as we can with the lead that comes in. But regardless, if we're in an area that we just we don't have a presence in, chances are we might have had some sales there because we cover a lot of ground, so we'll reference some previous sales. But even regardless of that, we will say that we have proven systems and strategies that work in any market in any location, and that they're tried and true systems that we will put to work for them. And a lot of times going with a neighborhood specialist or somebody that says they have buyers, which we hear a lot, when a listing agent tells them they have buyers, then they're conflicted out from, who are they representing? Are they representing buyers, or are they going to represent them? Mm-hmm. So we tell them to be cautious of, somebody that is touting how many buyers that they have, or, being the neighborhood specialist, they might not have access to the same systems and strategies. They might just be local to one neighborhood, and chances are the buyer's not going to be coming from that neighborhood. So we like to cast a broader net when we market, and not limit ourselves just to that neighborhood, and rely on the proven systems and strategies that have worked and have been effective in other areas. And we'll pull up other properties that have sold outside of our sell box, if you will, and let them know how we show them success strategies from other sales in other areas, and how those strategies work for those properties and they can work for them.
So because of the higher interest rates now, have you had any sellers recently offer any type of subject to deals?
We have that conversation a lot. When we go out for our listing appointments, we're having different conversations with them. A lot of our initial exploratory calls are giving them different options. We're not a one-trick pony where we're going to go out and list the house. We're going to give them options of, bringing them a cash buyer to buy it now. We're going to give them options if they wanted to list it on the MLS, depending on the condition. We're going to advise them that they're, could be subject to inspections. They could be subject to having to get it ready for the market, staging and all that, which they may not want to do. We have another product on the team where we will help them fix their property up and get it ready for the market. And we will actually lend them the money and manage the project for them. And we do that at a fee through our Spark program. So through our Spark program, we have a program where if there's enough equity in the house and the sellers are motivated and there is either a relationship in place or the motivation is there, we will lend them up to $50,000 to do improvements to the house. If the numbers are just too tight for an investor to buy it, but there's equity in the house that they want to tap into and they don't have the money, sometimes it's carpet, paint, appliances, painting the cabinets, replacing the cabinets, doing the roof, deck. So we'll do those sort of things in order to, have another option in our tool belt to be able to offer them. And a lot of times we find even with the management fee and finance fee that's offered with that program, that they're still netting, $25,000 to $35,000 more than they would had they, just sold it as is. And then the last option is like the seller financing or subject to. So I had a property from a lead over the weekend. Seller is in foreclosure on a property in the city. It's rented out for $1,900 a month. Her mortgage on it is $1,000, and she owes $145 on it, $146. So there is an opportunity to sell that property subject to, take over the existing mortgage, and kind of solve her problem from foreclosure, and have a property that will cash flow $900 a month in that scenario. So we're looking for that. Some sellers are not understanding that, so it takes a little bit more explaining. But it's definitely a conversation that we're having in order to create opportunity because they locked in at a lower rate. Rates are higher now. If they're set on a certain number that they want to get out of the property, we can help you get that number if we can get the terms on the contract, whether that's seller financing or subject to.
So you said it's a Spark program that you guys, how long have you guys been doing that?
For a few months now.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's fairly new, but we have 3 projects under our belt with a couple more in the pipeline right now.
So how do you structure it as far as making sure that they do sell the house and that they do pay you back? Do you guys just put like a second lien on the property?
We do a promissory note, a recorded promissory note.
Gotcha.
Yep. And so it's similar to like a Curbio in a sense. But when we got out and got estimates from them, they were like triple the cost of what it would cost to get it done. And we just lost a little bit of control over the timing and everything like that. So in this case, we're able to recommend our contractors, which is required within that program. We're controlling the disbursements of funds for that, and essentially getting the property staged. It's a slightly higher commission on that program as well. So it's a win-win all around. I mean, generally as a realtor, we're doing a lot of these things anyway for the client, to get it ready for the market. This time we're just lending money.
Have you had one go wrong yet?
We have not. Yeah.
So do you have a plan in place? Like, obviously we don't have to know how much money you have, but losing 50,000 to anybody is a good amount of money. So what's the contingency if the house doesn't sell? We have a continued decline in the market. The house doesn't sell. The reason I ask this because I'm a general contractor. That's one of the businesses that I own, and I used to, a couple years ago, do a lot of these kind of pro bono jobs where I'd go in, spend 15 grand doing a deck, painting, carpet, whatever, mostly for the W group. That's who I was doing most of the work for at the time, and it went well. And then I started seeing the market's slipping a little bit, and I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore because I just don't want to eat 20, 30 grand and have to fight with somebody in court about their house. So the person obviously didn't have enough to pay for those repairs originally. Now what happens when their house doesn't sell? How do you recoup that money? Is there a plan in place on that note that says, now you owe me $100 a month or $500 a month or whatever?
There's a late payment on the plan, and there's a 6-month timeline that's built in. Generally, these renovations are 30 to 45 days, so it's an adequate amount of time. We're having conversations about pricing, but you're right. I mean, there's risk associated with the market. If anything happens in the market and it takes a turn for the worse, and prices come down significantly, we're not running these off of short margins where they're investing this money and they're only going to make a $5,000 difference. There's, as I mentioned, a minimum of $25,000 difference that they need to make in order for this project to make sense. So there is, I guess, some cushion in there in that event. We try to focus on vacant properties that need to sell as opposed to homeowners that are still living in there and doing improvements to their property while they're there, that they could change their mind. And then relationships. The first three have been through SOI folks of agents on the team that, there's strong relationships there. There's high levels of trust. We have a project going on with one of our seller leads that we offer the program to. So we're working through it. So by no means is this proven out just yet, and there's certainly risk to it. However, we feel we built it in with enough margin and expectations of the market, and really dug for motivation, recording a promissory note in the event of default where, nobody wants to lose 50 grand. However, it may take longer to get paid back. And depending what the market does, we like to see at least $100,000 of equity inside the house. We're not lending it on a skinny margin inside there, if there's equity's not inside the home.
Right. So the marketing side of things, when you get a listing, the house is listed for sale, what is your most effective way of marketing from that point on? Are you doing paper? Are you doing like open houses? What are some of the strategies that you guys use once you do have that listing locked in?
A lot of the marketing is built on price and condition, as we know. So like getting the price right and getting the condition right. So a lot of, the marketing per se is front loaded into making sure the house shows well and is priced right. Obviously, there's still additional marketing that needs to get done. That, in my eyes, becomes more of a seller tool sometimes to attract more sellers. A lot of that is digital marketing, social marketing, that is put out there, through Instagram and Facebook and everything like that. There is, for luxury listings, we'll do a more of a campaign inside of a luxury marketing campaign. So on the team, we have a 15-point marketing strategy that is built around each listing, and market analysis, getting the property right, as far as condition, the professional photography, having virtual tours, Matterport, drone, all things that kind of tie into the overall marketing. We're not placing ads in writing anymore or any papers. Luckily, nobody's asking for that anymore. It used to be a time where that was a thing. Unless it's, we had a dog kennel listing and somebody wanted it in a special dog kennel magazine. And I felt as though in that case, maybe there is some reach within that publication for somebody that's looking for a house that is zoned for a dog kennel. So we obliged to that. However, for all intents and purposes, most of the marketing is digital, and the house sells when it's priced right and it matches the condition.
So when working with buyers now, is it the inventory is still low, as we all know? So, and even though the interest rates are high, there's still low inventory. So you would think there's still a lot of multiple offer situations. Is that happening right now still?
Yes.
What you're seeing? Okay. And then I guess because of that, do you even have any clients that ever, as on the buyer side, ask about a potential subject to deal because of maybe getting into a lower interest rate?
So that mainly investors. I haven't had too many retail buyers. There's been some asset for assumption of loans, and usually through VA or FHA. And the response to that, they can be timely. And usually, if a property's on the market with multiple offers, the seller or the listing agent may not want to enter into that type of contract where it's an assumption mortgage and taking a longer period of time. On a subject to, most of those we're seeing is off market. We actually started to form a list of high days on market properties to target listing agents to offer them just another solution for their sellers if they're so hung up on this price, and started to reach out to listing agents and ask them what's going on with their listing, why don't they think it hasn't sold, what's their seller's interest rate, and would the seller be open to creative financing. So we haven't put anything together on that just yet, but that's been, a conversation and strategy, for what we're employing now in the future.
So for investors, that's my business. We find properties, we sell them to investors. Those transactions are very easy. We're selling numbers. We're not selling beautiful properties and carpet and paint. How do you train your agents on that? Because what I've had an issue with is agents that come and work for us that don't know about investing. And it's a lot to train them about investing if you're not an investor. So what is some of the training methods that you use to train your agents that maybe not real estate investors, but now they're going to try to sell to real estate investors? Because what I've found is real estate investors that are good know more than most of the agents.
Right.
So how are you training your agents to talk to those investors who probably know if they have, 10, 20, 80 deals under their belt? How are they trained to talk to those people?
So we ran a monthly meetup at our office for the past several years. So we encouraged our agents that wanted to work with investors to attend our investor meetup, so they can get some exposure to the curriculum of working with an investor. What we cover in there and with other agents is, the general formulas and rules of thumb that for somebody brand new, it's something to work off of. So we're working off of like a 70% ARV, which has been tougher and tougher to find nowadays. But we are still staying true to that. When I got in the business, it was 65%, and those deals are long gone. Then as far as like rule of thumb on repairs, we have a kind of spreadsheet in our office of like how to estimate repairs on that, and depending on what level, if it's going to be rental grade or if it's going to be retail, how to estimate price, the price of repairs. And obviously that varies. That's just like a ballpark to kind of go off of, in order to figure out whether or not you're going to spend more time looking into the deal. We spent a lot of time on pool and comps, because that is the other side of the identifying the deal, being able to see if it's a deal from how much work it needs, but how much would it sell for, and really being particular. We bring in appraisers to come speak to the team and let them know what their kind of guidelines are to be able to justify or make adjustments to values based on additional bedrooms, finished basements, parking in the city, parking in the county, what the adjustments are, and then how far out from a radius they would go for pool and comps. So it's just educating as much as possible on, evaluating a investment property, throwing it in a spreadsheet. So we have on the team master spreadsheets for pro formas, whether you're evaluating a rental property as a single unit, a multifamily property, or a multi-property portfolio. They can pull up any tab, throw in the addresses, the rent, and the expenses, and be able to determine whether that's a good deal based on a cap rate. That becomes a little bit easier to do because we have all the numbers. On the other side, on the fix and flip, same. It's another spreadsheet, but going through the same kind of process of purchase price, repairs, closing costs, if there's financing, cost of capital, cost of sale, and to see how much money is there to be made at the end to determine if it's a good deal.
Do you guys do any flips and or rentals?
Yes. Yeah. So I do personally, and then I've started taking on that within the team. So being a team, it's like a team leader, you have to constantly create more value for your team. So we have, in the past, I've done fix and flips and buy and holds with other team members. And this year we have started a fund in which we are buying multifamily property, which team members have the opportunity to invest in. So that's an additional added value. And then we're also doing fix and flips on the team. And I tell the team, if you go find the property, I'll put up the money. You can put up some money into it as well. And we will partner on the deal and allocate it appropriately based on, they'll use their commission on the front end, their commission on the back end, and they'll put up, $5,000 or $10,000, and that would all count towards their money into the deal. So doing fix and flips. Have a few going on right now, a couple land deals going on now, and then multifamily. I mean, I bought my first investment property, which was a 2-unit in 2007. It was a Baltimore City scope property at the time, which was their kind of vacant property program. And I finally sold that this past year. So I held that for, I guess, 15 years or so. And, over that other period of time, acquired another, not like you, Nick. I didn't go on a rampage in such a short period of time. I was selling real estate and managing other stuff at the time, but 18 rentals and a couple multifamily buildings. And as my leases began to expire the past year and a half, I would throw it on the market for like high rent and a high sales price. And like if I got either, I'd be very happy. Mm-hmm. And I was getting these high sales prices. And it's so hard to part with a rental property that cash flows so nicely. But at the same time, it was so hard to like not take money off the table while things were going on and kind of repurpose that into multifamily. So that's kind of been my personal, strategy over the past 2 years, is just selling some individual townhomes and taking that money off the table and putting it into multifamily.
So what scares me with multifamily right now, especially, is if you bought a multifamily building 4 years ago and it's coming up on your refi time, you could be dead just from one refinance, and you have to refinance because the commercial loans are 5 years, sometimes 10 years. If you're lucky, you might get a little bit more, but they're typically not 30-year
Right.
mortgages, where like we own all 4 units and under because we can lock in that 30-year rate. And now I don't have to worry about a refinance. And the only time that I will have to refinance is if it's going to benefit me greatly.
Right.
And right now it's not beneficial. Obviously, it's less beneficial. So that's what scares me. Do you have anything like to combat that issue that people will have when they got a 3.5 or 4.5% rate, and now they're going to the bank and it's an 8.5% rate?
We need to target those sellers that bought 4 or 5 years ago. Those will be good leads to target. Yeah, I would say, when properties, hopefully rents are increasing, you're increasing your rents during that period of time. So with multifamilies, it's important to have rental increases in there to offset that as you go. And that is the best way to try to compete or combat that.
Just offset it with income.
Yep.
Yeah, we've analyzed our fair share of buildings, and one of the other issues that we had was we made a bid on like it was 22 units, I believe it was, and we lost the bid by like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in my head, I'm like, how could somebody pay that much money and still make this deal make sense? And well, it turns out I just saw the building for sale and nothing really has been done for it. And it's for sale again for like an extra $500,000, and they paid for it back when I was bidding on it. But there are these people or conglomerates, businesses that are buying up this real estate that don't have cost of financing, or it's much less than what we pay. The competition in that realm is so much greater as far as the people the players that you're playing with. There's more people trying to buy single family residential stuff, but the people that you're competing with on the multifamily side can squash you like a bug financially. Right. So what's your strategy with that? What size buildings are you
so
targeting?
My sweet spot is like 10 to 20 units.
Okay.
So 10 to 20 units. And my strategy in those I make them sober living homes in addition to recovery houses and treatment centers. So my multifamily properties are leased to other organizations that operate them as recovery housing. And the numbers in that are just completely different than market rents.
Okay.
So I actually have two of those, but they're individual units. And it's a company. It's a guy who rents two of my houses, and it's probably like 3 or 4 bedrooms, and he just has people come in there for recovery.
Yeah, it's a great market. I mean, for the listeners out there, I mean, it's something that I've heard on other podcasts too, to look into, depending on your market area. For sober living housing in Maryland and nationally, there's a different accreditations within that. One of the levels of care is called 3.1, which is a sober living house that offers 5 hours a week of treatment. So it's more of a business operation that gets ran inside there. However, if you're providing the clinical hours through the separate entity that runs the treatment center, there's Medicaid reimbursements for each bed. And some states, it varies. In Maryland, it's a little over $150 a day per bed. So you turn a bed into a $4,500 a month rental rate, and you have, a 2-unit apartment building that you can get 2 beds per room, and you have 4 beds coming in, so you have $18,000 for each unit, and then you have 9 units.
Yeah, that's not bad.
So yeah, that on the surface seems great, but now you also are operating a business.
Correct.
So it's not just a rental.
Yeah, make no mistake. It's not. Yeah. It's not just that. So thank you. Yeah, I mean, you have significant expenses on the operation side. You have liability on the operation side as well to take into account. So I could not do that by myself. I've partnered with other people that have experience in that space, and we have a partnership where I'll go out and find the real estate and check the zoning and make sure everything is compliant within that. And we take it to them, and they get it accredited through the state, and then we partner on the real estate and on the business side.
Nice.
That's a cool way to make something work when it doesn't work financially
Yeah.
for sure. So with that, do you have or have you had like major issues with people? Also, ultimately, is the money coming from insurance companies? How does like the people that are in treatment, are they getting paid from insurance companies for that bed?
Yeah, typically these programs are through Medicaid,
Okay.
so directly from the government.
Well,
And
that's good.
they are set up for insurance pay at a higher level of care, like 3.5, which we're in the process of setting up as well. But for currently, it's all through Medicaid.
That's interesting. I've had a couple people hit me up. I was just renting out. I have a college house near Towson.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 6 bedroom, just on the city side on Northern Parkway and York Road. And I was having trouble renting the whole thing out this year. Usually it was like frats and sororities, but those people weren't on Facebook anymore. So
Right.
I had issues with that. So I started renting it out per room, and I'm actually making a lot more money per room now. But somebody did approach me about the sober living thing. Like they wanted to run the business out of that house, and I was like, oh, well, I don't know, send me some financials of like what you're doing and I'll take a look at it. But they never actually followed up. But that was one of the things on my list, and I'm glad you guys mentioned that, because I was kind of not comfortable with it at first. I didn't really know, like, are these people going to steal the copper out of the walls? Like, there's a fridge going to go missing? What's kind of issues come with that, running something like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stereotypes on it too, especially with the neighbors that hear you're going to run a sober living house. They automatically think there's going to be a methadone clinic and people lining up at 5 a.m., which is far from the case. No, a lot of these places operate, there's a lot of structure in place. I mean, there's the full gamut of operators out there. So there's some people that have, mattresses on the floor and just packing it to the gills and running it, not properly, which, I shy away from. And then you have others that are falling within the compliance. I mean, Baltimore City, for example, there's a limit on how many, beds you can have per house. And, in Anne Arundel County, there's a hearing last month rather, on how many beds you can have per bathroom. So they're starting to, as a state, and counties, put some compliance around these facilities. They see the need for it. They see the good that it's doing, but they're trying to, get the operators out of the business that are taking advantage of the system and just throwing mattresses on the floor. On the flip side, there's people in that same state floor that testified that if it hadn't been for that mattress on the floor, they wouldn't be alive and here today. So it's you have to be able to look at it from both sides, but at the same time, given especially folks that are very vulnerable and in early recovery, giving them a safe place to live is super important. So there's an opportunity to give back and to do good within your business and for it to be profitable. So it's worth looking into, especially if you have somebody approaching you, but you definitely want to do your due diligence on the people. And if they have any prior places, go and visit them and see how they're running those.
Yeah.
So I guess from the business standpoint of things, how much time does that individual typically stay in that bed at that property?
Yep. So for Medicaid, they will approve for 90 days initially, and then there's another up for a 90-day renewal. So the maximum they'll be able to stay is 6 months. So the average is probably like 4 to 5 months.
And it's not difficult finding a new person to fill that bed after their time is up.
No, there's waiting lists for that. I mean, there's folks that are out there that are relationshiping with hospitals and rehabs. It's usually a step down from a rehab center. So when somebody just finished their 28 or 30 days of treatment and they're not ready to go back home yet, but they need to integrate back into society, this is an option for folks like that.
So
It's a business that's operating with, alongside the real estate. And what makes me think of, I had a friend that was a flight attendant, and she lived in a crash pad, they called it, near the airport here. And it was like a 6-bedroom house or 5-bedroom house that they put additions on, and they put like literally bunk beds all throughout the house. And your flight attendants come in. It's a Southwest house because it's a Southwest hub here, and she paid like $250 a month or $300 a month or whatever, and she just came and had a bed. But she also shared that bed, or any bed, with like 15 other people. And I looked into it. The guy that was renting her house was making like $14,000 a month on a house in Linthicum, like
crazy.
2 miles from the airport, which is like an insane. I mean, the house was probably worth $300,000 max, and he's making like $15,000 a month. But it is like a business. Like he has to stock it with like paper towels. It's like almost like a Airbnb essentially. But you have you kind of make lemonade kind of thing when you have, that opportunity. So
Man, if I'm getting 14,000 for one house, I'm gonna stock it with a bunch of stuff.
yeah,
Right?
it's yeah. I mean, but it's just another way. Like I guess now too is a cool time to talk about different strategies on how to make investments work. As somebody that analyzes investment properties every single day, like you mentioned before, it's much harder to find the deals that make sense that I can sell off or keep for myself. So if you have a different strategy, even if it means a little bit more work, but it's making you money, then it's time to change your strategy.
Yeah. And yeah, so that's what was so exciting about this opportunity. One, being a person in recovery myself, I could get behind it really easily, and just having that knowledge and just wanting to do something more and have more of a purpose behind the work that I do, and having the experience in real estate, experience in recovery, and blending those two worlds together. It was just, it just went hand in hand. But it came as a result of like kind of beating a head against the wall of like, all right, what can we do next? Like these, deals are not making sense.
Hmm.
How can we, where's their opportunity? And, just heard it on actually Bigger Pockets before. A lot of people talking about sober living houses for investments. And I was like, you know what? I've talked about it before, but haven't done anything. Let's start taking some action around it.
That's cool. So, what are your goals over the next year and then next 5 years for you and your team?
Yep. So over the next year, we're looking to, as a goals, we kind of break it down by units and volume for our team because that's just the easiest way to quantify it, and then we just back into it from that. So a team of, selling 150 million over 400 units. So that is our goal for.
What's the average there? That's
Yeah. It is like 350,000.
okay. I was going to say 300. Okay.
Yep. And so to quantify that, in order to do that, we have to, there's some growth that needs to happen within the team. And, that's kind of aligned within our structure there. The 5-year goal is more around a freedom number, to, build up passive income and residual income to the point where not like, grinding it out every day. Like today, there's been ebbs and flows in the business, but I'm heavily involved in the business. I'm heavily involved in sales, and there's that grind. So, being number one, and that used to be like this big goal, but like, what you sacrifice and, when you look at profitability and margins and stuff like that, like, is that really the goal to be number one, or is it just to be highly profitable and find that sweet spot within operating in the team? So, we were a highly profitable team with 4 agents selling 75 million at one point in time in 2015, making over $1 million a year in profit. However, a lot of our exposure was built on 1 or 2 agents on the team. So, if 1 or 2 agents leave the team, then 50% of your business walks out the door. So we realized we couldn't be too small where we're so dependent and relying on 1 or 2 agents. But at the same time, as we grow past 30 agents, you start to dilute, and then it becomes, people aren't getting enough leads, people aren't getting enough attention, and there's that. So there's this, in my opinion, a sweet spot between 20 and 30 agents on a team to be able to, make sure that they're taken care of, especially that one that's operating out of one location, in order to, stay profitable and make sure everybody is hitting their goals.
So for your agents on your team, are you looking at like, well, I guess the question is, you definitely know this, but maybe not off the top of your head, the difference between your number one selling agent and your last selling agent. Is there a huge difference in those people? And what is, I guess, the average amount of units that these people are selling, and median, I guess, because average is skewed,
Yeah.
of course.
Yep. Yeah. So the goal for the team is everybody to sell 2 units a month, right? 24 units a year. And we've backed into that through those numbers I mentioned earlier. So if you're 3, 2, 1, if you're setting 3 a week, attending 2 and getting 1 signed, you're getting 4 pieces of business signed and converting those 4 pieces of business into 2 pending deals. So those are the metrics to get to 24. I would say 19 is probably the median.
Okay.
Half the team is doing over 19 and the other half is under 19. So not everybody is completely up to standard, but at the same time, it's skewed because we've brought in like newer agents, especially over the past year, that are starting from zero.
Yeah, there's no perfect way to do that math. I was
Yeah.
just more asking,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, being reliant on one or two agents.
Right.
What are your lowest agents
Yeah.
doing? Are they still making a living, or is this their second job?
Like one a month. And there's some out there, some of them get into the business with different financial debts and they come into the business thinking that they're going to be able to get a magic pill or through osmosis hang around and that's all going to be solved. And it's not always the case. And they end up, going back to a dual career. This happened last week. The agent on the team, said she has some debts that she wanted to pay off and take care of it by the end of this year, and then she would come back full time to the team. So she took a second job in order to be able to do that. When agents usually are coming into the team, they have a job, and we're talking to them about burning their boat and dedicating all their time and energy into real estate. And I truly believe that this business, we make it a lot more complicated than it really is. It all boils down to the metrics and doing the activities and making the calls. And if anybody is not hitting their numbers and I get in front of them and I say, well, show me your activities of what you've done, they haven't done the activities to even get close to hitting their numbers. So they're not even giving themselves a chance to be able to be successful. They're somehow tapping out before they even get there. So I tell them, don't quit before the miracle happens. Go back and start at 20 contacts a day. If you're a brand new agent, make 20 contacts a day. If you're, an investor, wholesaler, make those calls, have two-way conversations, whether it's through voice or text or email. But like give yourself a chance to have, 100 conversations a week before you completely make a decision to get out of the business.
Yeah, and I think that's a piece that's hard for a lot of new agents, just to get in front of people, get used to being on the phones. And I know, I'm still with Keller Williams now, but back when I was involved in the office, they would have a lot of like script practice, like how to talk to people, how to get those leads, how to be out, out and about getting those deals done.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, we still script practice. A lot of the principles that we've learned at KW, we embody today within the team. And I don't think they're like necessarily KW principles, but KW is just very good about teaching the basics within real estate. But if you go outside of KW, there's other brokerages out there and other agents that run their business through script practice and presentation practice. We run a productivity program called Agent Athlete, and we do this quarterly, and it is a fun program where agents can get points for activities that they do, and at the end of each quarter, there's a celebration for those that achieved the amount of points necessary to graduate. So, for example, at the beginning of the year, we had it a Hamilton theme, and so the Hamilton, the Broadway play. So we ended up doing a themed around that, and we did it, informational, and gave tidbits about the play and how it came up, and the inspiration behind that, and how we can use that inspiration within our business. And then at the end, for those that graduated, we took a train to New York, and 8 or 9 of us went to go see Hamilton on Broadway, which was really cool. Last quarter, we did Live Like Jay-Z for the night. I'm a huge Jay-Z fan, and I love his story and his come up. So we shared a lot of that as an inspiration. And like Live Like Jay-Z for a night in Baltimore consisted of renting a limo bus, going down to the Baltimore Museum of Art, where there was a hip hop exhibit going on. So some sort of education and culture. We went down to Bygone for very fancy dinner, and then to the Lollipop Room at the Elk Room for cigars. So anyway, so there's just a little bit of that like gamification within the team to stay, active to your activities, because it's easy to kind of get burnt out. But if there's a gamification going on and an opportunity to win, there's money involved, there's prizes as well. So we try to make it fun within the team.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like a lot of my, not a lot of my motivation, but I do get motivated when there is like, when it's like a game style of whatever I do, really, and a competition.
For sure.
Yeah, competition drives everything. So I agree with that. That's awesome, man. Well, Michael, we really appreciate you coming out here. Congratulations on all your success with the team, and hopefully, we can all work together in some other capacity outside of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I'm surprised our paths haven't crossed sooner, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought I actually did have a transaction with somebody from your team years ago, but it could be somebody else, and I have no idea. So I was like thinking about the address, and I can't even come to mind. But
right. Well, no, this was great, and I'm looking forward to linking up after this, doing some more business together.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks. See you next time, guys.